Alright, today we are going to be repairing or reattaching the tail to a 1997 alien figure. And what had happened is the bottom part of the thorax had cracked off. Let's see, there you go. From here. And that caused the tail to slip out, which is supposed to be able to swivel the tail back and forth. So what we're going to try and do is use a pin and glue method to reattach this piece, and then hopefully that'll hold the tail in. And just because it's been broke, I may go ahead and customize it by painting it black with some iridescent features on it. The pin and glue method is something that customizers have used for some time. So I used the pin and glue method to repair a Gears of War Marcus Phoenix elbow joint that had the entire forearm came off. But after that I was able to fix it, so there's now some mobility. So that whole forearm had broke off. And if you move the elbow joint, you can kind of see in there where it has been repaired. But it's not noticeable, and it works great. So we have the usual suspects. We have the rotary tool by Proxxon. We have a cutting bit. We have some drill bits, X-Acto knife, cutters, pliers, and various micro drill bits. So let's go ahead and get started on fixing the tail. Alright, so for the pins, I'm actually going to use a push pin, and the silver part, the actual pin part, will act as a rod that will connect the two parts back together. The blue part, which is kind of the thumbtack or the push part, we'll just crack that off, or we'll just cut it here. But this is a really great diameter for pinning. That also means that to pre-drill your hole, you'll need a drill bit that's roughly the same diameter, maybe a little smaller, but I'm going to use one that's the same diameter because I'm just going to put glue in it anyway. Okay, so I put my goggles on, and I'm going to go ahead and drill one of the two holes in the bottom of the thorax. I'm going to try and drill one here and here, and hopefully we can match those up pretty close on the piece that broke off, and that way the pins line up. Okay, so the drill went through pretty easily. I met some resistance at first, but then I think that this must be hollow inside because it's a two-part mold. So it went through enough, and I think we'll be able to fit the pin in there. There's going to be some debris left over from your drilling, so we'll definitely want to get the X-Acto knife and clean that up a little bit. I'm going to kind of alter my light source here. So the hole is somewhere in here. Yeah. So that's good. That'll be our first pin, and then we'll try and shoot for another pin right about here. But first, I'm going to scrape away some of this debris using the X-Acto knife. And you don't want to scrape away too much, just because when you go to retach the part that broke off, you don't want there to be too many gaps left over. Okay, that looks a little bit cleaner to me. So we're going to go ahead and position the second hole. As a matter of fact, I'm going to use this opportunity to show you guys something. If the drill bit's kind of sliding all over, you can do one of two things. You can create a little divot with the push pin, and that gives the drill bit a little bit of a notch to sit in. Or you can use an X-Acto knife, and you can basically just turn it. And as you can see, that's going to provide a little bit of a notch here for the drill bit to sit in. All right, looks like we got a good start. Okay, so the tricky part is trying to line up the holes on the opposite piece that you're trying to connect. So it's just going to take some trial and error. As you can see, I used an X-Acto knife to notch out where I'll be drilling the 2 holes. And this one you have to be careful. There's not a lot of depth here. So this is where you're going to use your pliers to hold it while you drill. So let me get set up for that. Okay, I think we're ready to drill. And you don't want to go too far in because your thumbtack isn't that long anyway. So we have a little bit of debris we got to clean off the drill here before we start our second hole. Don't be afraid to use the X-Acto knife to drill, to clean off your drill bit, because it does get kind of hot and it will melt the plastic while you're drilling. Okay, we got the 1 hole done. We're going to go ahead and drill the second. Alright, that should be good. Let's see, let's give you a close-up here. So there you can see the 2 match up. That should be it for your drill, so we're just going to set that aside. And as you can see, the thumbtack fits in. And we may need to make that hole just a little bit deeper. But our next step will be to insert the thumbtack in one of these holes. Okay, so the holes look pretty good and they do match up relatively close to the body. And we don't need to, I think they'll kind of self-adjust once you pin them in. So next we're going to take our blue fix and we're going to dab a little bit on the end of the push pin and then insert them in, and then we'll cure it, let that sit for a little bit, and then we will cut the thumbtack portion of the pin off and then insert it, and then add a little blue fix to that. So blue fix is a really neat adhesive. It is a liquid glue, and when you're ready for it to dry, so to speak, instead of just giving it some time, you actually cure it with a UV light, and it pretty much cures instantly. I think it's just a few seconds. So I've been experimenting with this and I like the results. So today we are going to use blue fix to repair the alien tail. So you're just going to squeeze it and you're going to just dab it over the holes. And then we'll put one of the push pins in, and we may not get both of them in just because those holes are so close together. We'll certainly try. Pretty good. They are a little bit angled, but again, I don't think that's going to matter too much. And yeah, this one doesn't want to go in as far as the pre-drill hole, but I think we'll be okay. It's being a little bit stubborn. So let's go ahead and cure it with the light. So we're going to shine it right on the glue. It says about 3 to 5 seconds. So that should do it. Yeah, they're barely moving now. So super glue, you still have to wait a little bit. Other types of glue, you have to wait an hour. Model glue, you still have to wait like 24 hours, and it's a real pain in the butt. So next we're going to cut off the actual tips of the push pins. Okay, so you can certainly use wire cutters to cut them off. These are a little dull, so I'm going to cheat. I'm actually going to use my rotary tool and just cut right through them pretty quick. Again, please wear goggles when you do this. Now I'm not so worried about the length of these pins, because if you remember, the action figure itself is hollow inside, so we shouldn't have too much of a problem. The question is just getting these pins to fit, so we might have to kind of wiggle it around or adjust the angles a little bit. Okay, so I did have to use the pliers just a little bit to kind of squeeze them together. Because they were pushing outwards, but I pretty much got them lined up, and I did lace the edge with some Blue Fix, and so now it's just kind of a wiggle game here where we're going to try and get this piece pushed in as best as we can. It looks like it slipped out just a little bit, so we got to make another adjustment. Alright, we got a little bit further. And as you can see, it looks like I'm just a little bit off with my pre-drill hole. And I'm guessing that probably happened. Either my measurement was off or the drill bit slipped a little bit. But we can actually pull that out. Oh, I see what happened. The plastic is just so chewed up in there that it really didn't matter where I was drilling. We can attempt to re-drill that hole a little bit lower so it sits flush, but something tells me it's probably not going to matter too much in the broader scheme of things. So I may go ahead and just put it back in and then just use the Blue Fix to fill in some of the gaps. The good news is that we erred on it being tighter, which means it'll hold the tail in. So let's see if we can fit that back in and clean it up with some Blue Fix and get it at least pretty close. Okay, so we got it in there, and there's a little bit of a fissure showing, but I think we can fill that with some Blue Fix. Same thing on the inside. I think I'm going to load the inside deep in here with some Blue Fix just to keep this from wobbling, and hopefully that still gives us enough tension on the tail that it can kind of stay put. But there are a few gaps and cracks that I'm a little concerned about. I'm not too happy they're there, but whether it happened during braking or during a repair, you can see that it doesn't want to fully sit in there. It could have something to do with the way the pins maybe aren't fully aligned either. So, and especially since we're going to paint it anyway, I don't feel too bad about filling it up with Blue Fix. So I'm just going to kind of load it up. I had laced the inside with super glue instead of the Blue Fix just because I couldn't access, once this was together, I couldn't access it to shine the light on it anyway. There's a whole bunch going in there. kind of hard to see in there, but there are some divots and tiny fissures. So we're just going to go over the whole seam and we're going to cure it. And then I am probably just going to let it sit for several hours before I attempt to try and snap the tail back in there. Yeah, so you can see everything that's glowing in there is actually the blue fix. I still feel like that far side has just a little too much. Try and adjust my light. Yeah, there's just this little shadowing in here. And again, probably because the action figure is hollow, it's just running through the hole, and it could have been the hole I drilled, or there could have been a little hole from just the action figure itself. It does look like it's filled up and cured, and you'll know it's cured because it's not wet anymore. So nothing's coming off. And I like to add a little bit of a second coat. In this case, just for the sake of evening it out, because those parts didn't sit perfectly flush. But again, the hope is that after you paint it, you won't even notice it anymore. And yes, the blue fix is able to be sanded. I don't think I'm going to need to sand it, but that's certainly an option. Alright, we're just going to let that sit just because I'm so used to using other types of glue and letting it sit. I probably don't need to, but it's just force of habit. Be back in a few seconds. Alright, so as you can see, I went ahead and pushed the tail back in, and the bottom part that we fixed did not snap off. It didn't buckle, and that is the pin and glue method, which is far superior than just using crazy glue or super glue to reattach something. Next, we'll see about painting them.